jurist was Abu Hanifa, the one I mentioned, in the 760s or so. He was at the time of the Abbasid takeover. He knew people like al-Mansur and people like that, the first Abbasid caliphs, and he was operating in the Iraq culture school. And he had a student called al-Shafi. Al-Shafi was the one who finally put the usul as we presently have it in place. And what happened was they started to put the hadith in, as I said, as we have it now, but the hadith represented the sort of legal opinions of different geographical locations. That's how I began to understand how the Gospels represented the legal or historical views of different geographical areas around the Mediterranean and so on of this person they were calling Jesus. In any case, as they put these together, Shafi made the final legal innovation. He said, I'm only going to accept a hadith, so by this time there were so many of them, it's, there were 6 collections. Ibn Hanbal had his own collection that wasn't even accepted. He was a later jurist around the 860s in Baghdad, Ibn Hanbal. Shafi was about the 800s. So Abu Hanifa and Malik was in Medina. He wasn't in the Iraqi school, he was in Medina. He and Abu Hanifa around the same time, the 760s, 770s. Shafi is around 800s, Ibn Hanbal is 850s. But by the time, once that was finished, the gate of ijtihad was closed. Those jurists were allowed to use their own power of opinion, which is the last thing here, reasoning, analogy, qisas. Rai means reason. Qisas means, strictly speaking, analogy. And, taking one situation and through analogy, extending it to another. We do that all the time in legal practice. Often we call it precedent. What's the precedent for this? But it's a little wider. You take it and make it enough. But some of the schools didn't accept. This is good for you to know because you say you're not in a school. My friend over here, you say you're not in a school, but you are. Everyone's in a school in Islamic jurisprudence. You're not allowed to combine schools in Islamic jurisprudence. You're either in one school or you're in another school. And the schools accept more or less of these things. But Shafi was the key figure in the construction of the usul as we have them according to Shah. And he said that, Shafi said, I will only accept a sunnah of the Prophet. So sunnah was not just sunnah, it became sunnah of the Prophet. Now what does sunnah mean? I told you before, Goldseer writes a very good essay or article on that. He said originally sunnah meant beaten path of the camel drivers, where the camels went in the desert. So actually it's the path the ancestors followed. It's the tradition of the ancestors. So any ancestor could be, you could have a sunnah about your great-grandfather, or a sunnah about your famous uncle or cousin or whatever. It's what the people usually followed from the ancient time, from primal history. But when Islam came in, it was the sunnah of the companions, the sunnah of the new Muslims, the sunnah of people who were important in the history of Islam. But with Shafi, he said it can only be a sunnah of the Prophet. I can't have a sunnah of Omar, I can't have a sunnah of Uthman, I can't have a sunnah of Ali. Now the Shiites say only sunnah, only hadith about Ali are acceptable. That's how they reject all the others. So they don't accept the Sunni collections of hadith at all. Only Ali hadith and sunnah are of any importance to them. So they're like totally in another world. Everything is about Ali. I don't know the name of their collections, but they have some collections in the name of Ali. But that's not what the Sunnis think. Now the Sunnis say all this is concretized by this ijma idea. Ijma is the basic building block. It's ijma that confirms the whole. My community will never agree on an error. The scholars, the consensus of the scholars will never be wrong. The agreement, the consensus of the community will never, as represented by the scholars, the ulama, will never be wrong. And that places them all in, you know, in strong, solid foundation. So the community determines which of the hadith that are the basis of the sunnah, you follow me, are going to be accepted. So they had their own hadith criticism, the way we today do Bible criticism, do gospel criticism, Old Testament criticism. We scholars do the same thing here now. And but the problem is, this is again the difference between Western and Eastern Orientalists. Western Orientalists don't accept the Eastern way of evaluating the traditions. I'll tell you why. That's what I'm getting to. I mean, there were literally hundreds of thousands of traditions. How did Eastern, why? It'll be clear why. How did Eastern hadith critics, if you want to call it that, evaluate these traditions? They had a whole system: strong, less strong, weak, spurious. I forget the names they used, but they have about 4 different categories. It's all in the Give book. You can see it in the Give book if you read the Give book. The different categories they use to evaluate the hadith as reliable or unreliable. How did they do it? Well, as it turned out, all these hadith had a chain of transmission associated with it, an isnad, which means chain. So the form of the hadith was, this is an answer to your why. You really need to ask why. I was going to get there. That's nice to jump ahead. It's a complex thing. This is just one little point. It's a whole understanding of how the system worked. These isnads would go something like this. I heard from so-and-so. This would be someone in the 9 or 800s, 8 or 9, who heard from so-and-so, who heard from so-and-so, who heard from Omar, who saw the Prophet put his handkerchief in his pocket. Or, I heard from so-and-so, heard from so-and-so, heard from so-and-so, who heard Omar say such and such, such and such thing. Or heard from so-and-so, heard from so-and-so, heard from so-and-so, who saw Ali stand up and sneeze. Or whatever is in the given hadith. You know, whatever point they're making, whatever legal opinion is given, whatever. So they had chains of